President-elect Trump's nominee for Secretary of State, ExxonMobil CEO Rex Tillerson, will need to address the Syrian crisis. At a thank you rally in Wisconsin last night, Mr. Trump called Tillerson, quote, one of the greatest and most skilled global business leaders of our time. Tillerson has spent decades negotiating multi-billion-dollar oil deals that benefited ExxonMobil and Russia. Members of both parties say they are concerned about those relationships.
James Baker served as Secretary of State in the first Bush White House during the first Gulf War, the fall of the Berlin Wall, and the collapse of the Soviet Union. He also worked as Treasury Secretary for President Ronald Reagan and as Chief of Staff. He joins us from Houston for an interview you can only see on CBS This Morning. Secretary Baker, good morning.
Good morning, Charlie. How are you?
I'm good, and it's good to have you with us this morning at a time like this. Let me begin with Syria and this humanitarian crisis. We're now talking about Rex Tillerson as Secretary of State. You know this man well. He's from your home state. What would he do? What would he be recommending? What's his worldview about Syria?
Well, I don't know that I know his worldview about Syria, but I know this. He's an excellent choice to be Secretary of State, and he has the opportunity to be an extraordinarily effective one because he has the management skills, he's got the experience, international experience, and he's got the negotiating skills to do the job and to do a very good job at it.
Are you worried about his closeness with Vladimir Putin?
Well, I'm not worried about that, Charlie, because he was doing in getting close to Vladimir Putin. He was doing what he should have done for the shareholders of ExxonMobil, and that is make good deals, good agreements with foreign powers, whether they were authoritarian or not, that added to the bottom line for the shareholders of ExxonMobil. You know, we used to have a saying in Washington when I was up there that where you stand is a function of where you sit. And he was sitting in the CEO's chair of ExxonMobil. Now he's going to be sitting in the Secretary of State's chair on the 7th floor of the State Department, and I guarantee you he's going to have a different outlook. He's going to be looking at formulating and implementing American foreign policy on the basis of the principles and values of this country and in the national interest of this country.
Explain the difference from being a CEO of ExxonMobil and cutting a deal with Russia, a transactional relationship. How is that different, though, from what needs to be done as a diplomat and Secretary of State?
Well, I'm not sure because I've never been a CEO, Nora, so I don't know.
Yes.
But I've cut a lot of deals for the United States, and I did so as Treasury Secretary, and I did so as Secretary of State, and some of them were probably good, and some of them maybe not so good. But I don't think there's a heck of a lot of difference. I think you know what your country's interest is, national interest is, and what our principles and values are, and you cut a deal that supports all of that, and you don't give those away just because you have a relationship with the person on the other side of the table that you can talk to. So go ahead.
Sorry, Mr. Secretary, you're partner in a law firm that represents ExxonMobil and some of the Russian gas companies that do business with ExxonMobil. I'll ask you a two-part question. Do you have any experience working with Rex Tillerson, and do you think that at all complicates your support for him?
Well, I've never done anything for the company in which Rex was directly involved. I know him. He's a friend of mine. I hunt elk with him, and I have great confidence in his ability. I want to tell you something, though. This story that somehow I was out there pushing Rex early on is not correct. When the transition people for President-elect Trump called me, I gave him really high marks. That call came in Monday, day before yesterday. So some of the reporting that you've seen on that somehow I was pushing him because of my firm's representation of ExxonMobil, that's not true. But I do think he would be an excellent Secretary of State.
So who was your first choice?
Well, you know, I don't know that I want to get into all that, Charlie, but I will tell you this. I think that there were 3 people under consideration by the President-elect that I thought would do an extraordinarily good job as Secretary of State. One of them was Senator Bob Corker, who's chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee in the Senate. Another was former Governor Mitt Romney, and the third is Rex Tillerson, but not necessarily in that order.
So
I wouldn't ask for my opinion in that order.
So what marks would you give Donald Trump in terms of who he's appointing as secretary to his administration?
Well,
is he doing well in your judgment?
Yeah, in my judgment, Charlie, he's doing very well, particularly given all the questions and concerns that were out there originally. Yes, I think he's appointing some extraordinarily capable people, but you're going to have to wait and see how it all plays out. I'll say one. I was thinking you were going to ask me a question. What is it that Rex Tillerson does what does he need to do to be a good Secretary of State? And I was going to tell you the most important thing that he needs to do is to establish a seamless relationship with his president. Yeah. You cannot succeed as Secretary of State unless you have that kind of relationship. And fortunately, I had that kind of relationship with George H.W.
Yeah, but it went way back to the time that you both were young men in Texas and worked for each other.
No, we didn't work for each other.
But you supported his campaigns, and he supported your ambition.
It went back 40 years because we'd been friends for 40 years. Yes, it did that. And so I didn't have as difficult a job establishing a seamless relationship with my president. Right. But that's the important thing for any Secretary of State.
Mr. Secretary, I know we want to talk about something that is close to your heart, which is the plight of elephants around the world. You have called for a worldwide ban on ivory. You have said that elephants are our collective responsibility as global citizens. What needs to be done?
Well, what needs to be done is a global ban on the trade of ivory trade. When I was Secretary of State in 1989, 1990, I pushed for that. We got that implemented through the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species. Then over the years, that ban began to erode a little bit. Exceptions were made here and there. Progress was made, by the way, in restoring elephant populations while that ban was in effect. As it eroded, that progress was lost, and we run the risk, Nora, of waking up here one day with elephants in dire possibility of extinction. And I don't want my grandchildren and great-grandchildren to grow up in a world that doesn't have elephants, and we have a great risk of that today.
That's an admirable concern. Some people looking at the future Trump administration believe there are too few people who have a strong view to protect the planet and who have strong views about the dangers of global warming.
Well, I don't know that I can speak for everybody in the administration. I certainly can't, because I don't know what their views are. I do know this: Rex Tillerson was one of the corporate leaders in the United States who first came out and acknowledged the problem of climate change. And so, but I can't answer for people who've been appointed to positions like EPA and so forth. I don't know the answer to that.
Thank you.
Secretary Baker, thanks for taking the time this morning.
Thank you for having me.